Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets here, live on Game Plus Network, as well as our FTN Network YouTube page. Chris Meaney hanging out with you. Missed you yesterday. Hurricane season. Hopefully everybody is staying safe. I was without power for hours and hours and hours. Everybody in my household is safe. Hopefully everybody in your household is safe as well. It is the last day of August. We are inching closer and closer and closer to week one of the NFL season. We're officially 1 week away from the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Detroit Lions to kick the 2023 NFL season off. We have talked a lot about sleepers and team previews and rankings and busts, draft strategy. We've done so much. We've done so many drafts here on this show over the past few weeks. I just can't wait for this season to start. And something that you guys have asked, the viewers, the listeners, of course, this show can also be found on iTunes and Spotify, here on our FTN Network YouTube page. Subscribe. If you're hanging out with us, smash the like button. IDP rankings. That's right. IDP rankings for the true psychos out there, myself included. We got our guy, Leo McNeely, joining us here today. Master IDP on the Twitter machine. We are going to talk IDP rankings. We're going to talk strategy, when to take some of these players, who to target, who to avoid. Can't wait for my conversation here with Leo. Towards the end of this show, I'm going to give you 12 of my favorite wide receivers, running backs, talk some quarterbacks and some tight ends. Basically, my guys that I have a lot of exposure to, players that I'm looking to draft again as we head into the final draft weekend of the offseason here on Mean Streets. And I'll also tell you about a few players that I'm avoiding because of cost, because maybe I think we'll see a downtick in production. We'll talk some rebounds, some breakouts, things like that here on this show after our conversation here with Leo. And then on Tuesday, we're going to take a little bit of a break. No episode tomorrow. We'll be back on Tuesday with Labor Day weekend, and we'll have some predictions on Set Bet Spike this morning. Eric Young and myself, along with George, we did a draft as well over there. You can go back and watch that. It's a listener league, and we're going to do something again on Tuesday for those that did miss the draft. Before we bring on Leo, I want to say that this will be our last episode here on Game Plus Network. The relationship between us and Game Plus Network is still strong. We still love my people over at Game Plus Network. A shout out to Chad Midgley, Anthony Ciccione, Matt Barish, Andrew Reed, all you guys helping us for the past 3 years here with this show and several other shows that we had on your network. So it doesn't mean that Mean Streets is over. We're still going to carry on strong. This is the most exciting time as a sports fan. As I said, week one is around the corner. NHL and NBA before you know it. MLB playoffs here under the bright lights of September and into October. A lot of sports things still happening. Dangle Batselli will still be a thing twice a week with myself and Eric Young. Mean Streets here will still be a thing. We're going to be with you throughout the entire season. We'll be talking sports, giving picks, fantasy, betting. It's all here for you, iTunes and Spotify as well. I do want to say thank you to Chad and Anthony and everybody over at Anthem Sports and Entertainment. It's been a fun ride. I'm very, very thankful for the opportunity here, for you guys believing in me and the show and the content as well. So not going to lie, a little sad, sour, not sour, sad. The relationship is over, but love you guys. Love everybody over at Anthem Sports and Entertainment. And hey, what's another show that Mean Streets from the FNTSY days? We've had a lot of shows over at Anthem Sports and Entertainment, and I've loved them all, and I've been so thankful for all of the time. And you guys will be killing. I'll still be watching everything that you guys have on the go as well. Deesh, you will be here, and we appreciate it. Love it. All right. Oh, and by the way, for this question, I think you probably need to drop Slayton. Maybe Slayton. Some news this morning is Jeff Wilson was placed on IR, so he's going to miss the first 4 games. But I think Miami's going to do something. I think they're going to bring somebody in, maybe Fournette or maybe Hunt. Speaking of bringing somebody in, we're going to take a quick little break. Leo's going to be in here next. We're going to talk some IDP rankings. Keep her locked. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network as well as our FTN Network YouTube page. Talk to you in a minute. Welcome back in here, Mean Streets live on our FTN Network YouTube page. Again, we'll be with you all season long. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following Leo on the Twitter machine. Master IDP, this show available on iTunes and Spotify as well. Chris Meaney hanging out with you here on this Thirsty Thursday, the last day of August. All the prep, Leo, you've done all summer long, all the rankings, the adjustment, the strategy pieces, a lot of great content, dude, that you have put out over at ftnfantasy.com. Congrats being part of the squad and welcome in officially. I know you and I have chatted behind the scenes. It's finally here, week one, man. How you feeling? How you feeling about your teams? You got a couple drafts to do, some more IDP drafts before week one or what?
Yeah, I got a couple still coming up, but I've had quite a few already. I got to compete in the Kings Classic IDP division this year, and yeah, ready to start getting into week one. I mean, I can't believe I have to start week one rankings. I've been so focused on dynasty and redraft rankings that now I got to get into week one already.
I did week one rankings last night. I was like, wow, I can't believe it. We finally have some matchups. I mean, just tinkering here and there, you know, injuries, and we'll talk about some contract stuff here with some players. But it is nice, I think, to kind of turn the page and get into week one. And like you said, it's finally here. So before we show your rankings, of course, they're all available over at ftnfantasy.com. You have a sleeper article, you have a bust article, strategy article. I want to talk about all that stuff here with you today, Leo. But let's just really start with IDP. I know some people are maybe a little hesitant to get into IDP drafts. They don't want to draft. It's like all skill players all the time. In my home dynasty league, it's been going on for nearly 20 years. We have IDP. We've always had IDP. It's been super fun. Sometimes it can actually be the difference maker. There's some strategy behind streaming certain players and picking up players being active off the waiver wire. Talk to me, like sell IDP. Give you the opportunity to sell IDP, and also just before we get into rankings, your strategy behind where should you be thinking about drafting defensive players in your squad?
Sure. So so first, I've been playing in my home league for 11 years or so, and it's had IDP since then. So I'm kind of like you. I've been playing it for forever, and now I'm kind of starting to share some of the information I've learned over the years with everybody. But I mean, the big thing about IDP, you know, there is a bigger player pool, but it really makes watching the game so much more fun. I mean, you have double the amount of players. You're not just watching the offensive side of the ball. You're getting to see the defensive side of the ball make plays. You just have double the chances of watching somebody play on a Thursday night or, you know, Sunday night or even Monday night. You know, it opens up a whole second half of the game. You know, you're just not focused on maybe somebody catching the ball, but also who's making a tackle or who's making that big sack or interception.
You know, me and my buddies were true psychos, and it's a different feeling, right? When you're rooting for defensive players. Okay, they're going to get the ball, they're going to run the ball. Maybe my linebacker will get some more tackles, or you know, corners on quote unquote bad teams where teams just kind of pick on that corner. You may not view them as a good IDP play, but you know, you see the quarterback targeting that player multiple times, and they're getting a few tackles. It is fun. Jake, we'll get to this question in a little bit. We want to stay true here with Leo and some IDP stuff, but I will, if you hang on for a little bit, we'll get into that. We're going to switch gears after with Leo and talk about my guys and skilled players and things like that. I say skilled players. And again, I'm already taking a shot at these IDP guys. All right, let's, I brought up here's your top 20. Sure. Again, you go really deep over at ftnfantasy.com. Here's your top 20. Foyer up at the top here. Olukin. He wants his name to be pronounced Olukin. I heard him say that himself. It's not Olukin. It's Olukin. You better get it right because this guy's a stud and he's atop your board here. Roquan Smith is a guy that I drafted in his rookie season in that dynasty league, and I've been loving it ever since. You have him here as number 2. Heavy linebackers here off the top. Nick Bolton, absolute stud as well. Micah Parsons, right? This guy has just been fantastic since he's entered the league. TJ Watt as well. I mean, when the Steelers have TJ Watt in their lineup, this is a team that wins games and they make things happen defensively. Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa we'll get into a little bit more. Bobby Wagner is back in Seattle. CJ Mosley there. There's a lot of great players on this list, man. Over at the right side, number 14, Devin White's one of my favorite players in all of football. Derwin James, one of my favorite players in all of football as well. Both of those guys on my dynasty squad and just in Madden, and I'm just loving every minute of it. Hassan Reddick, talk about a homecoming for him last year in Philadelphia, getting after the quarterback. Had a really, really nice season. I think Logan Wilson is an underrated player as well. Shaquille Leonard we can get into as well. I know I just listed off a majority of these names here for you, but who are some of your favorites here, and walk me through this list?
Yeah, sure. So, you kind of asked about strategy a little bit. I kind of see, there's kind of a drop off, I think, after the top 8 here. I have 3 linebackers at the top: Oluokun, Roquan, and Bolton. Most of the leagues that you'll find are tackle heavy. They give a lot more points to tackle, so you really want to get one of those top linebackers. All 3 of these linebackers have really good tackle rates, over 15, which is tackles per snap. Those are really high rates, and those guys not only are getting a lot of snaps, but they're getting the tackles when they're on the field. Oluokun has led IDP the last 2 years, so it's really hard to take him off the top of the list. But you can make a pretty good case that Roquan, deserves to be right up there as well. So I don't have a problem going either of those two as 1 or 2. And then you start getting into some of the edge rushers, Micah Parsons, TJ Watt, Crosby, Myles Garrett, and then Nick Bosa is currently holding out. But really what you're doing at the edge position in that next grouping here is there's probably a pretty sizable drop off after those guys as far as guys getting to the sack and making those big plays. So I'm really looking at this top 8 group and saying, let me get one of these guys and then maybe go back to offense and then come back and grab a few more linebackers.
So that top group is important. I would agree that there's a drop off for sure. But how early are you taking these guys? If there was somebody playing in let's say it's a 20 round draft where you have to roster 3 or 4 defensive players, or maybe it's just a league where you just have to roster 1 of these defensive players. When are you thinking about them? Like, is it very important in your opinion to get one of these 8, and that means you're thinking about them after round 9 or 10? Like, for example, like JJ Watt, like when he was in his prime, he was obviously a game changer, and if you had him, you were loving it. But I always felt like he went pretty early in drafts, and I just wasn't one to kind of get that top end of the board. But you think it's very important. So when are you thinking?
Well, it really varies. I mean, it depends, like you said, how many starters do you have? 1 defensive starter? I mean, I'm a little bit of a degenerate, and we're starting 11 defensive players. So it's really it's really going to depend quite a bit on how many starters you have on the defensive side. I think once you get kind of past probably like 8 defensive starters, you'll probably want to get one of these top 8 guys. But I think if you're maybe at like 6 defensive players, like I would say wait and just fill up your whole offensive starting lineup first, and potentially miss out on these guys. Depending on how your draft goes. But I think it really depends on how many defensive players, and also, how aggressive the defensive scoring is. Some leagues may only give you 1 point per tackle, and it's just like, well, defense doesn't really matter as much. But if you're looking at 2 points per tackle or maybe 6 points per sack, then it's makes more sense to grab one of these guys. So there's a lot of moving factors with IDP, which makes it a lot of fun. I mean, there's not necessarily a standard scoring that gets used all over across the board, but it makes things interesting and makes each draft a little bit more fun.
When you look at this list, and this is redraft here, if somebody was doing a dynasty startup or a keeper only, is there anybody here that would move up your board? Like, are you conservative with Nick Bosa because of the contract? Would you have him a little bit higher if this was a dynasty or a keeper league, or anybody else on this list that you would move a touch higher?
I mean, there's nobody here that moves quite a bit. I mean, I would move if Quay Walker was, he's a young guy that I think would be definitely on my top 20 here if he was in a dynasty. But none of these guys move too much in IDP. You're probably even playing in a shorter window than you probably play in offense, because these guys can change teams, they can change systems. The number of snaps per team can change quite a bit. So we're kind of probably even looking in I know some people play longer, but sometimes you're looking at 2 to 3 year window in IDP of kind of really locking in those guys that are going to produce for 3 years.
Big Browns guy, Leo?
Yes, I am. I live in Cleveland, and I'll be at the home opener against the Bengals in week 1. Looking forward to it already.
Oh, baby. I've been to First Energy Stadium twice. I had such a good time the first time. I had to go back a second time. Mooney lot. Great time, great experience. The second game I went to was super cold. It was extremely freezing. I was up near the top, and I live in Canada, so I'm used to the cold. But it was really cold, and it was the game that Garrett had the the toss there on Mason Rudolph. So there was some drama towards the end of that football game. I see you had Garrett here high on the list. Let's get into some sleepers. Now, you have the article. I didn't want to give away everything. Go check it out. I mean, fantastic write-ups with all the sleepers. I think you had like 10 or 12 sleepers, and I picked 5. I tried to, pick different positions here, with safety in Harrison Smith and Shaquille Barrett there, defensive end. We have a linebacker, a couple linebackers there up near the top, a couple guys, in new roles and opportunities on new teams. Pick any 1 or 2 here that you want, but I don't know. What do you think? It's your list, but what do you think of the 5 that I came up with?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great list. I mean, the name that jumps off the page to me is Azeez Al-Shaair. I think he's underrated. A lot of people that are just coming back into fantasy might not know who he is. He went from being a backup behind Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, and now is going to be the top linebacker in Tennessee. So I have him probably about linebacker 20, but he's getting drafted much later. It's all about value, I think, a lot in IDP, and I think he's going to produce a pretty big year. I mean, you go back 2 years ago, and he actually did play some decent snaps in San Francisco and put up over 100 tackles, but most people don't know about him. He didn't really play much last year, and I think he's going to be somebody that I've been grabbing quite a bit because he's, the cost has been so good on him.
And a real opportunity, right, to be a guy in Tennessee. Does this factor in at all for you? And the Titans maybe being, last year they were a team that everyone really threw all over, and then they ran on them in the second half of games. Like, do you think about that when you're putting together like rankings or projections? Like, hey, we could see a few more tackles from a player on. I don't want to call Tennessee a bad team, but I do believe that they're in the middle of the pack and the bottom of the pack. Does any of that come into play for you when you're doing some of these rankings projections? Like, they're a bad team, they may get a few more tackles.
Yeah, I mean, you do. In the back of my mind each week, I do think about the offensive versus defense and how much you think that defense is going to be on the field. And if you don't think that Tennessee is going to do much, and their defense is going to be on the field a lot of times with these defensive players, snap counts are a big part of it. If they're not on the field a lot, there's less opportunities. Tennessee was near the top as far as number of defensive snaps last year, so I see that trend continuing. You want to not only have your player on the field 100%, but you want that team's defense to be on the field a lot. So yeah, you do want to weigh that in there.
One tool I think you'll like over at FTN, and I know I love it, and our viewers and listeners, that pace play tool, right? I mean, see the pace, how the offenses run, and also on the other side, right, which defenses are on the field quite a bit, and you alluded to it. Man, you got some big names in your bust list, right? You really do. I love it. I'm here for it. Some people, when they get bust, they give a guy like that's hardly drafted in the later rounds, middle rounds. You got some names on here, sir. Like Nick Bosa, we alluded to it with the contract. Will Anderson, Jack Campbell, some new bucks there. Of course, we are talking redraft, and I'll let you talk about that when you dive into some of these players. Sauce Gardner and Shaquille Leonard is a guy that I've had on my Dynasty League for a few years. Last year was a bloody mess. I'm willing to stay true to this guy in that type of format. But if the injuries do creep up in his game again, I may just have to move on. This Sauce Gardner one, is that just because nobody's going to throw his way? Is this like Nnamdi Asomugha back in the day? It's funny with Nnamdi Asomugha back in the day, he was an interception machine. And then when he went to Philadelphia, when they had that dream team and they signed everybody, they weren't throwing his way. And so there was just no points to rack up. I know he was always drafted early in those leagues. And then I think, the league realized that he wasn't as good as what he was when he entered the league, and everybody was just targeting him all the time. And he became a really good IDP player because he was getting those tackles. It's just as Sauce Gardner. I mean, you're just not throwing. Teams are just not going to throw at Sauce Gardner. He's a big name, defensive rookie of the year, right? He's obviously already an elite corner in the league. Is that the thinking here? He's just not going to get tackles.
That's exactly it. I mean, part of it is just, currently on Sleeper, they have him as going off the board as like the third defense back overall, which is like way too aggressive. I mean, he didn't even finish I think he finished around the top 40 last year. But yes, it comes down to he's a shutdown corner. He proved to everybody last year he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Teams are going to try to avoid throwing at him, so he's not going to get the tackle opportunities. Unless you're playing in a league that gives a lot of points for passes defended or defended passes. he's probably not going to do too much for you. You really want to, if you're playing in leagues that don't require you to start a cornerback, you're just going to draft all safeties and get guys that are going to play in the box a bunch and really rack up those tackles. They'll give you that consistent floor that you want from your defense. And so it really comes down to, him being that shutdown corner. He's got the great name, got great player, but that doesn't always translate to fantasy success.
What about the rookies here in Will Anderson, Jack Campbell? What do you think about them here in year one? Just playing time?
So I think Jack Campbell, I think it comes down to playing time. Currently, I'm surprised that I thought out of camp he would be one of the starters, but they're currently seems like they're committed to Alex Anzalone and Derek Barnes. Maybe by the end of the year, Jack Campbell will take his rightful spot at the top. But right now, going into the season, he's a little bit worried about his snap counts, him getting on the field and having the opportunity. Will Anderson's a little bit different. I think he'll get on the field a bunch, but rookies typically take some time to develop on the defensive line, especially those edge rushers. Even Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau last year, they didn't produce top numbers as rookies. It's been historically like that. They just take a little bit of time. I think Will Anderson isn't the most physical. I mean, he's pretty good in run defense, but he's not the biggest, most physical guy. I think it's going to take him a little bit of time getting used to matching up against those big offensive tackles. He'll have a few splash plays up and down, but I don't have him currently in my top 25 defensive linemen. But he's going off the board earlier in that in some different formats.
Yeah, in redraft, I find him going early. Again, rookie-only drafts are a little bit different. I'm seeing him and Jalen Carter go, fairly early. Is there a rookie off the top of your head putting you on the spot of one that you feel like may actually just be okay this year in year number one, or do you just kind of avoid them?
In general, I avoid them. I mean, last year I liked Devin Lloyd, coming out. He got some playing time right away. There isn't anybody right now that's kind of jumping off the board. I mean, just like you see an offensive, on the offense side, ADP all summer gets influenced by dynasty. So you see that happen with redraft. It's not like we have two sets of ADP typically.
Right.
So I think ADP is influenced by these rookies getting pushed up from dynasty, and it's impacting what people are seeing in redraft ADP. And you'll probably just want to knock them down a little bit and kind of ignore that ADP a little bit for the rookies.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this. Got to talk to you about Bosa, right? I mean, he's a big name. We saw on the overall ranking list here, you had him at 8. Some contract disputes. Don't know what's going to happen. Shanahan is confident. Well, I don't know if he's confident. He's optimistic that these guys are going to get a deal done, but we're creeping up to week 1 here. So I don't know. Does he have to fall to 8 in your rankings here? Like, how far does he have to fall to say I'm gonna roll with him, or do you just kind of view it as like a Jonathan Taylor situation where, like, I don't know, like, yeah, he's gonna be with the team. I don't know when he's gonna be with the team. Maybe I'm gonna avoid him. What are you doing with Nick Bosa?
I mean,
are you buying low in Dynasty? I'd buy low if you could.
Yeah, in Dynasty, I have no problem investing in Bosa, but it really comes down to like when you're drafting. I mean, I think I'm still optimistic that he'll sign before week 1, but if you've got a chance to get one of those other 7 guys, I'm going to grab them before I get to number 8, and then I'll probably just wait. But I have recently drafted Nick Bosa a couple weeks ago, so but as we get closer and closer to the season, and he hasn't been picked up, and that he hasn't picked up that contract, you get a little bit more worrisome. Same thing with Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs. I was kind of avoiding those guys, with the uncertainty that, like, if you're going to draft somebody, you want somebody that's going to be ready for you week 1, plug them into your defensive lineup. You don't want necessarily some of that uncertainty that could derail your season before it even gets started.
You're not wrong. All right, Leo, thank you so much for your time, man. This is awesome. This is a lot of fun. I know there's some, like I said, there's some people who are looking for some IDP rankings, some strategy. I think we touched bases on when to take some of these guys. And your rankings can be found over at ftnfantasy.com. You already talked about weekly rankings, which is awesome as well. IDP, man, I am here for it. I think more people should try it. Why not expand the player pool and play with as many people as you can? You got some sleepers and some busts for some people as well. Master IDP on the Twitter machine. In a league where I'm like you have to roll DL, LB, and defensive backs, and then you could do whatever you want. I think linebacker's the way to go, right?
100%.
Linebacker is the way to go. Stephen Drake has got a question that we'll get to here in a second. So we're going to say goodbye to Leo. We're going to answer some questions here. Thanks so much, man. Enjoy week one. Have fun at First Energy Stadium. And we'll see what the Brownies can do with Deshaun Watson and company. And I'm a big Nick Chubb fan, so I know you'll enjoy watching Mr. Chubb.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
No problem. We'll talk soon. Cheers. Welcome back in here, Mean Streets on Game Plus Network, live on our FTN Network YouTube page. As I said, the show's going to continue to go on. Subscribe to our FTN Network YouTube page. We're going to with you throughout the entire NFL season, NHL, MLB, NBA, golf, MMA stuff. You know, it's all happening here on Mean Streets. And of course, the show available on iTunes and Spotify as well. Stephen Drakes does have a question. You do not need to throw any money at us, good sir, and we will answer any question that you have for us, but we do appreciate you here. How do we feel about Jerome Ford? You know, Jerome Ford was a decent target here all summer long as like a late round flyer. Is he going to fill the Kareem Hunt role? No, I don't think that will fully go to him. And the addition of Pierce Strong Jr., I think hurts Jerome Ford a touch. There's some uncertainty. I can't tell you with confidence that Jerome Ford's going to be the number two or that he won't be the number two. I actually like Pierce Strong a touch more than Jerome Ford. I think that he's a better pass catcher. I think he could be suited more for a bell cow role if anything were to happen to Nick Chubb. My goodness, I hope not. I know you're just looking for maybe a late round flyer, a next man up. Maybe you want to handcuff Nick Chubb. Jerome Ford has minimal touches on his NFL resume. He's hardly touched the field. He's hardly had any snaps at all in the 2 years being a Brownie. You know, what is gone from this team? Kareem Hunt, it's 125-ish carries, including 40 inside the red zone. That's 40 opportunities, inside the red zone, 25 carries inside the red zone, roughly 40 targets. You know, Nick Chubb isn't just going to get 400 carries because Kareem Hunt is gone. Right? He had 302 roughly last year. He's been a beast his whole career. He's been a beast. 5 yards per carry every single year, 1,000 yards every year, but one his rookie year. I think he's the best pure runner in the game behind, a decent offensive line. And I think he's going to catch some passes this year. I think, in his sophomore season, he was on pace for 50 at the halfway point before they brought in Kareem Hunt. Last was it week 18 with Deshaun Watson last year? He had 5-6 targets, 4 or 5 grabs, 40 some odd receiving yards and a touchdown. I think Ford is an okay flyer, but I also think Pierce Strong Jr. is. I have a lean to Pierce Strong. It's not like Ford is a guy that's, been in the system for a long time. There's an opportunity for both of these guys to be the number two in Pierce Strong and for Ford. I think that they made the trade for Pierce Strong for a reason. And like I said, I think he could have a role as a pass catching back. I think both of these guys will battle it out, to be the number two. I don't think that there's going to be a ton of usage for either of these guys. In years past, when Kareem Hunt was on the squad, there was times, I talked about the red zone usage. He's on the field. He's on the field getting some red zone targets and some red zone carries. I don't think we're really ever going to see Jerome Ford or Pierre Strong in those situations, even like 3rd and 8, maybe 3rd and 8 on the 18 or something like that. We could see a Ford or Pierre Strong come in, but I believe it's beneficial to have a guy like Nick Chubb on the field, and he can catch. Man, I tell you what, he can catch. Like I said, on pace for 50, averaged just over 2 as a rookie in the last 7 games of that rookie campaign. So I don't feel super strong about Jerome Ford. I think he's a decent little dart throw towards the end of drafts. If you have Chubb and you want to handcuff, go for it. But like I said, I don't think it's a lock that Ford is the guy. Ford is the guy over Pierre Strong Jr. Another question here from Jake. Hey, fellas, I'm looking at Chubb, Bijan, or Kelsey in a half-point PPR. Also, Mahomes may be available at the turn in round 2. Would love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I'm a big Chubb guy. I mean, for a lot of the reasons that I just brought up, right? I mean, coming off a career season with 1,500 rushing yards, he's flirted with that number before. I think that he can have 2,000 total yards this year. I think he's a guy that can catch 40 plus balls, and if you're giving Chubb 40 plus receptions on top of what he's already done, he is the favorite to lead the NFL in rushing yards according to DraftKings, and this is his backfield. So I am Team Chubb over Bijan and over Kelsey. I would probably lean Bijan over Kelsey. I do have Kelsey ranked ahead. I'm not sour on Bijan. I do like the strategy of having a hero RB going running back in that first round, whether it's CMC, Eckler, Chubb, Bijan towards the end of the first, and then really diving into some wide receivers. You can go Mahomes if you want. I don't think you need to. I understand it's Patrick Mahomes. He's the MVP, and the guy's a baller, right? I mean, he has the upside to throw 50 passing touchdowns. He's in that tier with Allen and Hurts for me. I think you can wait it out. I probably would wait it out. If this isn't a 6-point passing touchdown league, I don't think you need Mahomes there in the second. Get yourself Chubb or Bijan, and then dive into the wide receivers. Maybe go wide receiver heavy. Get back into the running backs. Pierce is an option potentially in the 4th round. 5th, 6th, 7th round. That's how I like to do my drafts. But knowing Chubb, I'm getting wide receivers, Ridley, Devontae, DJ Moore, Christian Watson. I've been hammering wide receivers. Maybe get a tight end in there, maybe a Hawkinson, a Darren Waller, or somebody who can catch 100 passes. You don't have to worry about the tight end position. And then, there's quarterbacks that you can take a little bit later on. Trevor Lawrence is at the end of that top 8 for me. Trevor Lawrence, Herbert, Fields, maybe you can get in the 5th round. You can wait it out for a Daniel Jones, a Geno Smith. You can be risky with an Anthony Richardson. Make sure you get somebody like a Daniel Jones, Geno Smith in case that doesn't work out. But there's going to be a lot of RPOs, design runs in Anthony Richardson's game that we didn't see in the preseason, which will open up some of the passing there. But I would lean Chubb. I don't know what pick you're at. I don't know if you know what pick you're at, but I would lean Chubb. Bijan after Chubb, and then away you go. You can hammer some wide receivers and get back into the running backs. Rashad White, Javonte Williams. We'll start talking about some running backs here to target in just a second. 2 drafts left. Love this part of the year. Appreciate everything means, of course. Yeah, hopefully I steer you guys in the right direction. But you guys are all super sharp. You guys have been hanging out with me for 3 years. You guys know what you're doing. But I'm here for any support, any questions you guys do have. Hi guys, 14 fella Superflex League. I think people are gonna rob like 8+ quarterbacks in the first round. Usually that's how it goes. Yes, worth a pick. Lamar ahead of Eckler and Kupp, for example. Yeah. I think as long as it's we've had some Superflex conversations on this show before. We have a couple of drafts. If you want to dive into some of those and see how we went about our drafts. I kind of we call it the Jeff Ratcliffe way on this show. I like to take some of the value at the quarterback at other positions. If you're picking, for example, if you pick 8th and the first 7 picks are quarterbacks, I'm not taking another quarterback. Like I'm taking that value of Justin Jefferson or CMC, Eckler, Chase. 14 team is very different, especially when people are going to have 3 quarterbacks. Like there's only so many quarterbacks to go around. But I am fine with Lamar ahead of Eckler and Kupp. I'm fine with Fields and Burrow ahead of Eckler and Kupp. I'm not there on Herbert or Trevor Lawrence, but you're not wrong. It's going to be a lot of quarterbacks. It's going to be early and often. It's okay to zag when everybody is zigging. Take that value, soak it up. Don't punt the quarterback position altogether. Maybe you can get one in the 2nd round. That 2nd round quarterback may be a Geno, a Daniel Jones, a Deshaun Watson. I think Anthony Richardson maybe risky in a 14-team Superflex league. Get yourself a top 10 quarterback. You could wait it out for a guy like Pickett, Howell, Love, even Tannehill. I'd like him to be your 3rd, but even Tannehill. But Purdy, I think, is a good number 2. I think Derek Carr is a good number 2. You don't need to go that way, but I'm comfortable with Lamar, and I would imagine he's gonna. I would guess your draft probably starts Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, any other order. Lamar, Fields, Burrow, JJ maybe sprinkled in. I think that's how your draft will start. Yeah. I mean, how long are you confident getting a quality QB1? Watson? Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say Watson is probably the cutoff, although I do believe Daniel Jones and Geno Smith are decent quarterback ones that you could get. Like, I would rather have them than Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. I think there's a rushing floor, right? There's a rushing floor with Daniel Jones. There's a sneaky rushing floor with Geno Smith too. How has it been 3 years? I know it has just been, oh my goodness. Yeah, it's two quarterbacks. They go early and often in most drafts. All right, Anchor in the house. Hi, my wide receivers are Devontae Smith, Godwin, Mike Williams, and Lockett. Running backs are Dobbins, James Conner, Jahmyr Gibbs, Monty, Swift, Charbonnet, Deuce, tight end Hawkinson, Josh Allen. How do you think? I mean, pretty solid. It's a pretty. You got the Detroit backfield there. There may be times where you're starting both of those guys. There may be times where you're starting Montgomery over him. I think your running backs may be a touch weak. Just, Dobbins is your one. Although probably Gibbs is really your one. Montgomery's your two. Connor's underrated. Dobbins is like the wild card. He could certainly break out. I think Charbonnet's got some bell cow ability to him. Walker's a fade for me. I like Charbonnet. I think that, he could have a role, second round back. That they drafted a year after they drafted Walker as a second round back. He's going to run routes and catch passes, which with Kenneth won't do. I mean, you got a great quarterback. You got a great tight end who I like, who could be tight end 2 overall. Fully believe Hawkinson is in for like a 100 catch season. Godwin, Smith, Mike Williams, Lockett. Those are good wide receivers. You may find yourself dropping like a Deuce for. There's no bats for that, right? I didn't even mean to do that. Dropping a Deuce for a wide receiver. You may find yourself doing something like that because you may need another wide receiver there. But I like the team. Team's solid. It's going to compete. It's going to compete for sure. Okay, I have some things I wanted to share with you guys. I think I got through all the questions. I do believe I did. So I wanted to share my guys with you. There won't be a show tomorrow. My guys, a couple busts. I don't have a board for tight ends and quarterbacks, but I'll rapid fire through that at the end. I'm going to start here with wide receivers. No particular order, really. I suppose it is ADP and somewhat my rankings, but these are the wide receivers that I've ended up with the most this season. I don't think that there's a bad wide receiver pick from number 1 to number 15, 14, where I have Calvin Ridley. I don't think there's a bad wide receiver here, but Garrett Wilson, 147 targets last year, the 6th most at the wide receiver position. He only caught 83 of those 147 targets, and he only had 4 touchdowns. I heard he had one with Aaron Rodgers in like a minute of playing time throughout the preseason. Enter Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers. I'm not kidding. This is going to be a duo that looks a lot like the old 17 in green with Aaron Rodgers. Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers were awesome for years. I expect Garrett Wilson to ball out this season. I would not be shocked if he led the NFL in receiving touchdowns. I want him wherever I can get him. Devontae Smith from week 2 to week 18, 1 fewer target than A.J. Brown, nearly 20 more catches than A.J. Brown. He doesn't have the same ADOT, average depth of target, or really ceiling in terms of touchdowns and yards per catch. But don't sleep on the Slim Reaper. The schedule is tougher for Philadelphia. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that may mean this team may actually throw the football a little bit more with Jalen Hurts and company in the second half of games where they just cruised last year and really leaned on the run game. I think more competitive games means maybe more here for Devontae Smith. Calvin Ridley, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I needed to see him on the field, building a rapport with Trevor Lawrence. I was extremely impressed with what I saw from him. There's definitely a connection with him and T-Law. In year number 2 with Doug Peterson, I expect an uptick from Trevor Lawrence like we saw last year from the first-round quarterback in year number 2, getting away from Urban Meyer. I didn't love the usage from Christian Kirk in the preseason, not really getting on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. Didn't love what I saw there. Think about how good Christian Kirk was last season. Calvin Ridley is a much better wide receiver than Christian Kirk. We haven't seen him in a little bit, but he's not too far removed from 90 grabs, 1,400 yards, and 9 touchdowns. This is like a souped-up version of Christian Kirk, who had a great year last year. Wheels up for Calvin Ridley and this Jaguars offense. Christian Watson, wide receiver 4 in a half-point setting in fantasy points per game last year from week 10 to week 18. He struggled staying on the field early. He struggled with some drops. I get it. Rodgers is gone. Rodgers, I think he's going to do some good things with Garrett Wilson, but he didn't have a great season last year with the Pack. Jordan Love has been hitting up Christian Watson in the preseason. He was wide receiver 7 overall from week 10 to week 18. He was playing 80% of the snaps. He was already ahead of Al Lazard. If I don't get Watson, I want Jaden Reed. I want Romeo Doubs. I want one of those 3 guys Christian Watson, I've been leaving my draft with him as my wide receiver 3. And you can still take a running back and get yourself Christian Watson as your wide receiver 3 in the 4th or the 5th round. DJ Moore, his upside was on full display here in the preseason, a yak monster. Justin Fields finally has somebody to lean on here. DJ Moore is among the leaders in receiving yards over the last 5 years in football. He has played with piss poor quarterbacks. I get it. Justin Fields has some accuracy issues. Jalen Hurts made the leap forward when they brought in A.J. Brown. Josh Allen made a leap forward when they brought in Stephon Diggs. Those 2 passes from the preseason where DJ Moore took it to the house and like a 63-yard touchdown, and then another was like a 53-yard, wasn't a touchdown, but those were brutal throws from Fields, and DJ Moore still was able to rack up a ton of yards. He is a yak monster, and I want a piece of him and Justin Fields. Jahan Dotson, I have him ahead of Terry McLaurin, even before the Terry McLaurin injury. 4th in ADOT last year among guys with 60 targets, 9th in a yards per catch statistic, 7 touchdowns, was tied for first among rookie wide receivers last year. 4 fewer red zone targets than Terry McLaurin. He played 5 fewer games. He started hot, 4 touchdowns in his first few games, got hurt, was limited when he came back. Only averaged 5 targets per game overall, but 7 per game down the stretch of the season. Sam Howell's going to turn some heads. Jahan Dotson's a player that I like a lot. George Pickens, same sort of deal. I think a breakout here in year number 2, a touchdown machine, a walking highlight reel, catch radius is off the charts. Deontay Johnson's, of course, going to score some touchdowns this year, but don't be surprised if you see Pickett to Pickens all year long. I like Zay Flowers. He's my favorite Baltimore wide receiver to draft. Great runner. He's going to see a lot of one-on-one coverage. Todd Monken in town. They ran 11 personnel fewer than anybody in the league last year. They're going to run it this year. It's going to be a different offense. The attention will be on Mark Andrews, Odell Beckham Jr., Bateman stretching the field. And really, Bateman hasn't had a full season yet. Odell hasn't played in a couple years. Zay Flowers is the guy to draft in Baltimore. Sky Moore, roll in the slot. I like Rashee Rice. I like Justin Ross. Those guys are going to be gadget guys here this season. Kadarius Toney can't stay on the field. Sky Moore is going to have that role in the slot for Juju Smith-Schuster. Nico Collins, 34 targets in his last 4 games, 34-36 roughly. My notes may be wrong, but I know it's 30 plus. I think he's ready for a wide receiver 1 role. And then a couple rookies towards the end of the draft, and Jonathan Mingo and Jaden Reed. They just have opportunities. They just have opportunities here off the hop with Jaden Reed playing in the slot. And Jonathan Mingo, even Adam Thielen, like these guys are going to get targets. Like the offensive line of Carolina is not great. The rookie play, Bryce Young quarterback, may not be fantastic, but he's going to get some runs. Both guys are going to get an opportunity off the hop, and both guys are fairly cheap. No worries. We're here for you anytime. We're going to keep going here. I'll go a little bit quicker on these guys. These guys are running backs. Nick Chubb, Tony Pollard. Chubb, I've already talked about him at length, right? Real opportunity here for 2,000 total yards. I think he's going to catch 40-plus grabs. 1,000 yards every year but 1, 5 yards per carry every year. Best pure runner in the game. See you later, Hunt. No pulling her hair out when Kareem Hunt's inside the red zone. It's going to be all Nick Chubb. Tony Pollard has a real opportunity as well. I mean, this guy struggled near the goal line, 3 for 9 last year. No Zeke, but he's explosive. You know, he can catch. There's only 1 game. I think he has 20-plus carries. Dallas doesn't seem worried coming off a significant injury. They didn't really do anything. I like Deuce Vaughn as a dart throw, but they didn't draft really anybody to take away these touches from Tony Pollard. Dameon Pierce, this is his backfield. Yeah, it's the Texans, but I think he's going to catch some passes too. He's been playing 100% of the snaps with the first team offense. I'm not surprised to see that. He was our guy last year. He's our guy this year. Rashad White, Cam Akers, Javonte Williams. Rashad White, new offense here. Dave Canales moves over from Seattle, spent 13 years there as the offensive coordinator. They're going to move from some gap zones to some zone, and you're going to get guys moving on the offensive line. 50 catches as a rookie. Fournette is gone. He was inside the top 5 in targets and receptions last year at the running back position. I don't think this offense is going to be as awful. They'll run some play action. Baker's going to hit Godwin and Evans. They'll play at a slower pace. They'll have more success running the ball. White is going to get the ball in his hands. Canal said that. Going to get this guy the ball in his hands in space and let him buck. And then I think, 50-plus grabs. It's like one of the better backs going outside the top 20 who could be a bell cow back. I have him as a top 20 back. Cam Akers, no competition there. Offensive line is bolstered a little bit. 3 100-yard games to wrap up last year. Javonte Williams, I'm rolling the dice. I like him. Ton of targets last year in 4 games with Russ. Now all of a sudden a ton of injuries in Denver's offense. Sean Payton there. I think him and Samaje Perine are both good targets. They can both eat, just like Ingram and Alvin Kamara ate a few years ago in New Orleans with Payton. I like James Cook. I think he only needs 12 or 15 touches to be explosive inside this offense. But one guy I wanted to put on this list is Damian Harris. He had a goal line touchdown in the third preseason game. He's 2 years removed from 15 rushing touchdowns. He will be the goal line back in this offense. Cook may play like a DeAndre Swift role from last year, and maybe Jamal Williams. And Jamal Williams is a lot like Damian Harris. It's very possible. Don't completely ignore Damian Harris. Isaiah Pacheco from week 10 to week 18, averaged 14 carries and 70 rushing yards per game. He was RB 17. Year number 2, learning the playbook, the guy with Andy Reid. Mahomes, great on the big stage, caught more passes, on the big stage in the Super Bowl and the playoffs and down the stretch of the season, running routes with Mahomes, cleared. Him and McKinnon are I want one of the two in drafts. David Montgomery, like I talked about, could be the Jamal Williams role. They like him. Could be the goal line back. It's not going to be all Gibbs. It really isn't. Montgomery's the value. Tank Bigsby, Rashawn Johnson, Ty Chandler as little dart throws towards the end. I think Ty Chandler, get to know this guy. They moved on from Dwayne McBride, not a second round pick, but a pick that they had this past year in the draft. And Ty Chandler is going to catch some passes. And I don't know if Madison's going to be super efficient. Rashawn Johnson and Tank Bigsby could be absolute league winners for you. This season, they could be league winners, and I fully believe that. Rashawn Johnson may take some time, like Akers, like Javonte Williams in their rookie season. And for Tank Bigsby, he's a guy that can do it all. Short yardage situation, catch some balls out of the backfield potentially. ETN struggled as a goal line back. He had 3 fumbles, which was tied for the most among running backs. He's not really built, in my opinion, as a 20 carry guy over and over and over. Tank is. And new regime, Doug Peterson has a history of using multiple backs. Year 2, I'm sure he likes ETN. And I think ETN is a fine target. He's like Eckler. He only needs like 15 touches and an explosive offense to be good. But you get a guy like Tank Bigsby, you drafted him for a reason. He could be a goal line back there. He could get some short yardage stuff. And on the way out of here, last one for you Game Plus Network crew, hanging out, sports and anthem, entertainment. Don't draft these guys, Andrew Reid, unless you're playing with me. Then you can draft all of them. And I know we're in a couple leagues together. Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones. Hey, Jay Dillon, man. This guy's the goal line back. It's a committee. It's not like put a blindfold on Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones and watch these guys buck through the air. It's just not going to work that way. Aaron Jones has 6 rushing touchdowns the last two years. Kenneth Walker didn't run any routes last year. Wasn't great in short yardage situations. Struggled as a goal line back. Charbonnet is going to have a role. J.K. Dobbins just bad vibes, not feeling it. Bad knee. DeAndre Swift, George drafted him. Sorry, buddy. There's a lot going on there in Philadelphia. I like the Philly boy in Philly. Not going to be the goal line back. Not going to get a lot of first and second down looks. I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to dump it off too much to him. Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Drake London, Christian Kirk. I like Ridley. Right? You add Ridley, somebody has to scale back in the offense. Drake London was great down the stretch of the season. There was no Kyle Pitts. They're just going to run the ball as much as they want. Desmond Ridder's going to throw the ball, 20 times a game? Not interested. Terry McLaurin, I just would rather Jahan Dotson. And Deebo Samuel on the way out here. Deebo Samuel, just go look at the last 4 years in fantasy points per game. 10, 10, 18, 10 last year. They brought in CMC. They scaled back on the red zone rushing attempts. I like him overall as a player. He's an absolute freak. He's the man. But Brandon Ayuk had a better fantasy season than him last year. 1,000 yards, more fantasy points overall and fantasy points per game. And he is going much later than Deebo Samuel. I think he's the better pick. I know Aaron Jones is, I don't know. I mean, he's a good back. He's a great back. He's consistent, but he's not going to get goal line carries. And he's not going to catch 50, 60 passes with Jordan Love. It's not like Aaron Rodgers. So I'm just a little concerned in drafting a guy in a timeshare, like 15th overall. Harris over Cook. No, but that's a bold take. I think I'll have more touchdowns than Cook. He could. It's a health thing. I think there's a higher ceiling here with Cook, but it's a health thing. And I know you're a Packers fan, and you would know better than anybody else. So maybe I'm wrong on Aaron Jones, but we'll see. Have a great Labor Day weekend. Game Plus Network. We appreciate you. I love you. We'll miss you guys. Chad, Anthony, Barish, Reed. Appreciate everything you guys have done for me over the past few years. Have a fantastic football season. And we will talk to you guys at FTN Network on Tuesday. Cheers.